The Secrets of Disney is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
Ladies and gentlemen.
What's there, Mama?
10,000 years will give you such a crick in the neck.
How do you do?
How do you do what?
Show me the smile.
If you can't say something nice, don't say nothing at all.
Very nice. You can sit by me.
Everything's so wonderful.
Come on, get up. Come on, get up.
Where are we going?
Up to Neverland.
You must kiss me.
Excuse me?
Please, princess.
One kiss.
Unless you beg for more.
Hi, I'm Deborah Shaben, and you're listening to The Secrets of Disney, where we talk about everything Disney, from theme parks to movies and shows, and we delve deep into the tips, information, and fun discussions as we explore the intersection of pop culture and faith. And today we have a special topic. I can't wait to talk about it because it's kind of unique. We're going to talk about heroes and villains. And here to join in on this discussion today are my panelists, Lisa Hendy.
Hey, great to be with you. Getting in touch with my inner villain.
And David Henlos.
Trying to find my inner hero. Still trying.
Oh, we can talk about the intersection of all of that here on today's show. And it's funny because I think the three of us, because we're so, I guess we're so into our faith, it's kind of hard to say, which villain do you associate with? Because we're really not supposed to really think about that. You know, we're supposed to be doing good. And so like, okay, which villain would you be? And to help us along today, we took a couple of really fun little, like, you know, those stupid internet tests that are like, which princess are you? Which villain are you? And we'll see what we all came up with. But before we see who our inner villain is, do you have any favorite villains, y'all? We'll start with the bad.
I mean, favorite villains for me is kind of an oxymoron, because do we really like the villains? We've got to have them. But I mean, I guess as a storyteller, you know that the best stories are those that have conflicts. So the villain plays a role. But I don't know if I would say I have any favorites. I think Scar, if I was going to say one, would probably be my favorite. So Scar from The Lion King. How about you, Deborah?
I actually don't I'm like you. I didn't really have a villain per se, but now that I'm thinking about it, like, you know, every story has a conflict. So I was thinking about Moana, and I'm like, who's the villain in that? And then I realized that they're not necessarily villains, but very complicated characters. And the fire demon, I can't remember what they call her. But she, you know, turns out to be, you know, the goddess in the end. It's just like her alter ego. Like, she's the one that everybody fears. Taka. There we go. Anyway, we gotta go battle a lava monster, and, you know, and Taka, and you find out Taka is actually their goddess and used to be a peaceful island until, you know, Maui stole her heart. Well, Maui's, you know, it's like this fluctuation between hero, villain. And I like that. I like that gray area.
Well, it's funny. Let me just say this really quick, that on that back and forth, when I was looking at some of the villains, one of them was Beast, which is interesting because he's also considered a hero. So sometimes you can be both a hero and a villain. So,
well, just if we're talking about straight villains and not someone who's got any gray area there, the more I'm thinking about it, I'm probably gonna have to go with Gaston from Beauty and the Beast, just because you know, he's not one of those, you know, he's not a spellcasting witch. He doesn't but he is literally someone I could see I could see that guy happening in real life, or I probably met somebody. I mean, like that is
You
probably
know
one of
that
the most
guy.
real. That's probably one of the most realistic villains I've ever seen. That's probably like one of those snobby, stereotypical snobby jock that somebody has met in high school. It's like, I think I've met that guy.
I have two things to say about that, which is, we see the Beauty and the Beast from kind of the perspective of Belle in a sense, but not necessarily, and Beast, but not necessarily the townspeople. And the funny thing is like, when they're singing about Gaston at the very beginning, they're honoring him. They're like, there's nobody like Gaston, and and how great and browny and strong he is, and how the women swoon around him. So the townspeople like him. It's just Belle who doesn't.
Right.
He's especially skilled at expectorating.
Patooey.
I love that. I do love the voice he does there. I'm a special. Yeah.
Sing it.
Oh God.
I almost, there were so many songs that came to my head when we were preparing for this podcast today, because Hercules is a good example too and we'll talk about heroes in a second, but Hercules, zero to hero and a major hunk, and so there's like all the songs that go along with him, but there was that, you were talking about how we've all kind of met a Gaston, and the arrogant and kind of narcissistic character that Gaston is. But I also think one of the scarier, but more not so scary until you see them. And Disney's come up with a lot more kind of sinister, under your nose characters, like the villain in Frozen. I want to say Hans. So, yes, Hans, where he pretends to be in love with Anna, and then at the end it's really revealed what kind of villain he is. And then the other one is the guy from Up, the explorer who gets stranded in South America, and then he turns out to be the villain trying to kill the main characters and collect Kevin, the egg, the rare bird. And so you see him flip from being a good Joe to what his villainous nature is, with not a lot of I guess foresight into that. It was just kind of like a flip.
I have to say, I've been working, every writer sort of has their novel that they're constantly working on, and I've been working on one for the last several months, and that's the funnest character to write, and to have the secret knowledge as the writer. When you're writing that character, you're trying to kind of like keep it under the wraps that they're actually the villain. And then it's revealed at a certain point, but it's sort of fun having that knowledge as you're creating the character before it's actually revealed. So I'm sure they had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, and that's I always wonder if people the actors who play the villains in the movies, in real life movies, like love playing the villain. Is that something they're like, woohoo, I get to play the villain because it's so much fun? But I don't know. I don't know if anybody's ever said, hey, that was so much fun, I played this villain. Maybe Movie Monsters loved it, but
I interviewed, I don't know if you guys remember this movie. I can't remember what the name of it was, but it came out a couple of years, and it was about the Boston Marathon bombings. And I interviewed the two actors who played the Tsarnaev brothers, those brothers that did the bombings. And those two young actors were both very new, kind of new on the scene. And, this is really kind of their breakout roles. And one of them told me that he actually kind of was a little concerned about playing that for his first sort of famous role, because, will you then be typecast, or will people, automatically assume that that's your nature? But they also said they sort of intentionally shunned themselves on set because they wanted their cast members to kind of have that feeling about them, that they weren't part of the thing. So it's really interesting. I would imagine as an actor, the challenge of playing a villain is probably a great challenge.
Can I just pause for a second and ask you a question, which is, what makes a villain a villain? What are the characteristics you think make a villain a villain?
Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, I always lean towards anti-heroes because people like tend to identify, at least to some extent, with them. But the villain, what makes a villain is just really like, for me, a good villain is one that at least has some dimension to him, like as to why or something like that. The cardboard, I'm evil just because I'm evil, always kind of bores me. But it's either either I want to know why they're a villain, or if they can't have that, I want to see how cartoonishly far they will go. that gets interesting too.
Yeah, it's sort of like the fallen angel, huh? Like
Right.
they would have been a hero, but their mom and dad were really mean to them. But when they were little, that's interesting.
Well, think about, like, okay, here's an example I was thinking about all weekend. It is literally one of my favorite underrated Disney movies, which is The Emperor's New Groove.
Oh,
which
yeah.
has some of the best one-liners of a movie ever, because it has David Spade and
Cheers.
Nathan Fillion, is that his name? And then Eva is played by Eartha Kitt.
And Patrick Warburton is Krunk.
That's it. That's who I'm remembering.
Patrick Warburton,
Yes.
like one of the best voice actors out there.
Yeah,
For straight classic. I am, voice.
well, and it's funny because it's like there's that dichotomy again of like Kronk, who's technically the bad guy at the beginning, and so is Yzma. And then also you have the bad guy being the Emperor himself, Cusco.
Yes.
Because, they show him being, slightly narcissistic and, well, very narcissistic.
Slightly.
Yeah, slightly, just a little bit. And spoiled and entitled and a little power hungry. And, and you see all the bad things he does. And then he goes through the transformation, quite literally to Llama, but also into a better person, into a less selfish person as the movie progresses. And you also see the dichotomy of Kronk, who literally has the angel devil moment where he has to choose, which, is he going to do bad or good? And ultimately he chooses good.
Which gives you hope, right? That,
right.
That there's always a chance for, and that's what we want in those stories, the story of the hero's journey.
Right. Because it's the whole Disney relies heavily on the Joseph Campbell, I guess, guidelines for the hero's journey, and in every movie, especially the Pixar movies, it all follows, basically the step by step the hero's journey, and I don't know what. So I did give you. There's some quizzes, and I will try to remember to send them to Dom to put in our show notes. I gave David and Lisa and myself a couple quizzes to take to see what their inner villain is. And so the two I took, one was a BuzzFeed one, and the other one was a Oh My Disney one. And I got the same villain for each one, which is Ursula.
Bonus points for consistency.
Right?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing that you got her in both places because you must have been really consistent. I was thinking when I was taking the BuzzFeed one, if I answered this half an hour later, who would I get? Because I'd probably answer these questions differently if I'm hangry when I took the quiz. And ironically, I think David and I got the same person. So do you want to reveal who you are?
We are Jafar for some reason. I don't that freaked my wife out.
The Grand Vizier. I think for me, the part of the reason that I got it was there was a little bit of a spiritual element to Jafar, sort of like, will you use your brute physical thing, or will you use like your evil powers of your mind and and I wonder if you answered it that way too, that's how we both got it.
Yeah, well, the main, I think why they end up with Jafar for me, like, how would you punish your enemies? Like, would you crush them, kill them? I'm like, or embarrass them. I chose embarrass. And then I would rather someone die of humiliation.
Right. I think that was probably why I got Ursula, and too, is I chose things like that. Like, I don't really want to kill anybody, but I do want magical powers.
Yes.
You know, and then so that's, I guess, the other thing too is like, you know, are there things that villains have that that you want, like some certain powers or certain attributes that would, you know, would be, it's kind of like Slytherin in the franchise we shouldn't be talking about on Secrets of Disney. But, you know, when you're in the Slytherin house, you know, it's not like, are you all evil, or can you use parcel tongue to, you know, to speak to snakes for the good? You know, is what sinister, I guess, skills would serve also a hero.
Well, it's probably not really like a classic Disney villain, but the other person that I was thinking of was Ernesto de la Cruz from Coco, you know, Benjamin Bratt. That character.
That was Benjamin Bratt? Oh, yeah, I totally get that. Yeah.
And that sort of, you know, bravado, you're in love with him, he's like the hero, and then suddenly it's like his real side comes out and you learn the backstory. So interesting.
Right. Hey, I just took a really stupid Disney quiz. I shouldn't say stupid. It was based off of your birthday. What's your soulmate, your villain soulmate based off of your birthday? And I got Jafar. So there we go.
Nice. There we go. That's funny. I was just sad that I guess he's not really a villain. He starts out as one. I was sad that I didn't get Stitch or something like that, because that's one of the few voices I can actually do that's in my vocal range.
Okay.
You'll have to do it now. You got to do the Stitch.
Ohana means family, and family means no one gets left behind or forgotten. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That's
very good. That was awesome. I didn't get her in the quiz, but I said my backup is definitely Cruella de Vil, who's like the most evil, you know, even her name, Cruel Devil, Cruella de Vil. That she's sort of like just, you know, the massive evil villain person skinning puppies. That's just terrible.
Yeah,
but just like she's not out for world domination or any or like she wants to kill puppies, and that's pretty much just like it's like that's something that even like some hardcore mafia guys are like, no man, that's too much.
Yeah,
it's like I'm like the same people who will break someone's nose for a quarter will not kill a puppy. It's just
Oh, I'm trying to think who the most villainous villain is. Now that we talk about, that's just a bridge too far. Who's the most villainous villain?
I mean, you got to go back to like, you know, the some of the classic Disney movies like Snow White, the evil,
evil queen. Yeah, I have to think about that. I'm trying to race through all the villains in my head, and that's a pretty good one. I think she even goes as far as disguising herself to do her dastardly plotting and planning. So it's interesting. Yeah.
I'm going to be curious to see who our listeners say that they are when it comes to villains.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think if there's some other villains that, like when you mentioned Stitch, you know, what turned him was a little behavioral therapy by, you know, his earthly family, but also, you know, is there a point where a character can be redeemed and go from villain to hero? And, you know, and Disney's good at showing us stuff like that as well. You know, like I mentioned Emperor's New Groove and, Moana, where Maui turns from, you know, basically a Gaston kind of character to, you know, somebody who is Maui. But, you know, I wonder where that point is. What is it that turns characters from villains to heroes?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many. And an interesting thing is that there are almost as many female villains. And I think sometimes for me that a really scary female villain is actually, maybe it's because I'm a woman, but they're almost more evil because we don't expect them to be, you know?
Like in Cinderella, obviously the villain is the wicked stepmother who has no special powers, so to speak. You know, she can't cast spells. She's not, you know, all she can be is mean. That's pretty much her specialty. mean and cruel, and she's that way consistently through the movie.
And Maleficent, who is, coming into rights on her own as sort of, somebody who's talked about now a lot in opposition to the Disney princesses, is another really, a really big one.
Yeah. And because I think another villain question before we talk about heroes, and this is something that I was trying to figure out. And once you said Maleficent, I totally, when did the villain sidekick kind of take root? Like, when did they ever get this animal sidekick? And I couldn't remember what movie would have been one of the first to feature like the villain sidekick, that would have been an animal.
So I'm going back a little bit to what is the name of the movie? But Shere Khan and Kaa, the
Jungle
snake.
Book.
The Jungle Book, yeah. So maybe that, I don't know.
No, you said and she had that
Maleficent,
crow.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that's true.
And if I remember correctly, and people can correct me because I don't have my Wikipedia up to show the sequence of Disney movies, I think that's the 4th or 5th movie that was made animated. So it's an older, but it's one of the older ones. And before that, like Dumbo and Bambi and Fantasia and Snow White, and none of them. I mean, Snow White had little woodland creatures, and so did Sleeping Beauty, but nobody had a dedicated sidekick. And so
here's something interesting, Deborah. On one of the lists that I looked at, that was a list of villains. It listed the movie Bambi, and they listed can you guess who the villain was in Bambi?
Man.
Yes. There you go. Never
well,
seen.
And if you think about also Dumbo, who's the villain in that movie, it's Man.
Oh, Man.
Right? And and technically the overarching villain in the Jungle Book is Man, because they're all afraid of him. They're like, we got to return the man cub to the man village, but we can't have anything to do with Man. So it's interesting how, collectively we become the villain. And maybe that's something we've kind of seen also slightly during this last couple months with the, as far as environmental issues, like, seeing smog clear up and water clear up, and like, oh yeah, we're kind of the villain, aren't we? All right. Yeah. Anyway, I was just thinking of famous sidekicks for villains too, because there's several of those that have always been classic, like Iago, who's Jafar's sidekick, who was voiced by what is his name? Oh gosh, it was on the tip of my tongue. You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah,
comedian.
the little guy.
Yeah, Godfrey.
Gilbert Gottfried.
Oh, Gilbert Gottfried. Yeah.
Yes.
And he was very that voice famous. I can't do. That's so guttural it ripped my throat out. I used to try.
But they always seem to have really interesting sidekicks. Ursula, her sidekicks were the electric eels, and Hades had Pain and Panic. And I was thinking of one of my favorites though, and this is a weird one. This is obscure. You ready for this one? You might not even remember who this is. So in The Rescuers Down Under, the villain had this lizard called Joanna the Goanna. And Joanna was so cute. I used to love that sidekick because she was so cute as a dastardly lizard. And I kind of felt a little like, oh, I bet in the right hands she would have been a perfect pet.
There you go. I mean, there's a whole other question: as does the plucky sidekick have their ability to choose stripped away from them? So,
right? Yeah, I admit that was one of those obscure. Like, I used to love that as a sidekick. That's like the only thing I remember from that movie, and is the henchman's little animal sidekick. Anyway, so we can talk about your hero's journey now, from maybe being slightly villainous to potentially being a zero to hero, a major hunk. There we go. My Hercules.
Well, at least somewhat decently presentable.
Right. Who's your favorite hero then?
I actually was going to say Hercules first, just because he messes up so much.
Right?
Like I identify with a guy who's not so much with the guy who jumps in and saves the day, but jumps in and saves the building after tripping under his own feet, knocking over a wall. Not yet.
Like,
yeah.
He tries very, very hard, kind of like Tarzan does too. In Tarzan, name of the movie, and Wreck-It Ralph. There's a good one.
Oh,
I like.
Yeah,
I've got to go Belle, because even though I don't know that you'd think of her as a classic hero, Love is the hero, but Belle, I mean, particularly when she replaces her father and takes on, the punishment of her father. I mean, I loved her from the minute that she was a bookworm at the beginning of the movie.
Yes.
But her courage and, the fact that her heart is turned, I don't know. I've always had a soft spot for Belle.
Oh, yeah. I could see that. And that's the thing. I'm looking through all of these quizzes on Oh My Disney, and they're all like, what is your favorite Disney, soulmate princess? And they're all princess quizzes. I'm like, I just want a hero. Can I just get a hero based off of every hero and not just Disney princesses?
But don't you think Belle could have been a hero? Doesn't have to be a princess, because in the beginning, stick her in jeans instead of the yellow dress or whatever.
Right.
It's
this reminds me of Wreck-It Ralph 2, where they have the Disney princess. Have you guys both seen that?
No,
yes.
I haven't.
Yes, it's excellent.
Yeah, they have a. I'll try not to spoil too much of it, but there's a segment where where they have all the classic Disney princesses in a room, and Vanellope, the deuteragonist, or however you call it, it shows up, and she's like, and she really, technically she's a Disney princess too, and they basically go over all the tropes about how men have rescued them and stuff like that, and then towards the end of Wreck-It Ralph is falling from a great height. Looks like he's going to get killed. And they all shout, oh, look, a big, strong man in need of rescuing. And they actually they go off and save him.
Yeah, I love Wreck-It Ralph for a lot of reasons. And, and his is a good story, too. Like, he wants to be the hero. He doesn't want to be the bad guy. He tries so hard not to be the bad guy, and then it ends up being even worse.
Mm-hmm.
It's another Hercules kind of story, but I don't know if I'm trying to think who I really would I think Wreck-It Ralph is a good one for me. I think and I do like Kronk, and I do like the Emperor from Emperor's New Groove. I really do like them, and I will throw Goofy in there. Weirdly enough, I will throw Mickey Mouse and Goofy in there. Well,
irritating as he may be.
Another famous, underrated Disney movie that has like this really strange cult following, that same following that has Emperor's New Groove has, is a Goofy movie. Have you ever seen it?
Yep.
A long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it is really quite a good movie. It just celebrated its 25th anniversary or 20th anniversary this year. And because we used to have it on VHS, and when I was doing daycare, like a day camp for kids, we'd put that in the morning, every morning, for, if any kids wanted to watch some movie. And I got hooked on it. It's but it's a story about how Goofy is, really trying hard to be a good dad, and, and Max, who's his teenage son. So it's a really interesting, here's another story of somebody who's trying so hard that he kind of screws things up, but it's so endearing. Yeah, it's so endearing, and I think Goofy is a very unsung hero in my mind.
Well, I'm just wondering, David, when you watch these movies with your kids, I was thinking about how, when I review movies now, a lot of times I'm thinking about, from a family perspective, what a family will take away from it. Do you kind of have those conversations with the kids afterwards about oh, who was the bad guy, or who was the good guy, or what scared you, or whatever? I mean, there's a lot that can be organically learned from looking at the hero and the villain in a story.
Yeah, we always have the who's the bad guy and who's the good guy conversations, but it's always obvious which part scared them because they will like literally like dive under a blanket or like my kids are 4 and 7. 7-year-olds still can't finish the Jungle Book just because the as soon as the snake gets there, boom, she's done. It's like big long snake. I'm out. Pff, done.
She sounds like a Nebraska girl to me. I would have been the same way.
That is so funny. I just had this flashback of, it's not a Disney movie, but we had the VHS tape of Jumanji, and it was just terrifying to my younger son. So much so to the extent that my husband had to actually like take it out and bury it in the backyard, like smash it up into pieces and bury it.
Wow.
My son was so upset by that movie, and we never really even watched the whole movie because he was just so terrified of it. So I don't know what was so scary, but yeah, the going under the blanket could be a good, I've done that on occasion lately when my husband's watching something on Netflix. So
I have an Ursula, not my Ursula story, but an Ursula story is, so I watch a lot of YouTube content that are Disney people who go to Disney and like, you know, do Disney videos at Disney. And one of them, her name is Molly, and she was talking about how she couldn't get through The Little Mermaid because she hated Ursula so much. And that when she would have to have her parents fast forward, you know, back in the VHS days, you know, when her, I guess the finale scene between her and Prince Eric, because she just hated that scene and hated Ursula. And then they took her to Disney, and Ursula happened to be in one of the parades, and she turned to her mom and said, "What is she doing here?" And then she made her whole family, she was, you know, probably, you know, David's daughter's age, made her whole family turn around and not watch the parade while Ursula was going by.
Oh my.
Too funny.
Isn't that cute? That's a cute story. But, you know, I can see how Ursula could be very scary. She's very much the epitome of the Disney villain. You know, heroes are, you know, there's so many good hero stories, you know, that it's hard for me to pick my favorite one. I don't know did we go through some of the more iconic ones? I guess like Simba's like one of the more iconic ones.
Yeah, or Aladdin is another one that comes to mind. Interestingly, on Pocahontas, on one of the lists that I looked at, both John Smith and Pocahontas were listed as heroes. I think she is far more than he is, but
yeah. I loved that movie. That movie came out when I was 19, and it's just one of those movies that kind of define your, you know, when you're on your own for the first time in your life. And I'm like, oh, I have such good, you know, movie memories with that particular movie. It was my first summer I worked at Disney, and that movie came out.
And you could paint with all the colors of the wind.
Exactly. And that's such great music comes from that too.
Well, I have to say, here's a movie for you. It's obvious in Peter Pan that Hook is the villain, or at least when they're in Neverland, but I don't consider Peter Pan to be an actual hero.
Oh.
I consider him to be, well, I mean, he kind of helps save the day, but he's kind of a jerk.
He's kind of a 12-year-old still. He's a boy.
Yeah. He's just, he doesn't want anyone to get hurt, but he's mostly just playing around through the whole film. He doesn't take any of it seriously.
Yeah, I could see that.
If anything, I think Wendy is probably the most heroic.
The hero, the heroine
of.
Yeah, I could see that. And yeah, it's funny because now that you mention it, yeah, Wendy kind of does save the day for the most part.
And she's getting assaulted by the mermaids. He's like, oh, whatever.
I never thought about that's. I guess Peter Pan is not one of my favorite Disney movies, and maybe that's the reason why you hit the nail on the head is that the person we're supposed to want to be like, which is Peter Pan, I don't want to be like him. I want to be like Wendy.
I would want to be in Neverland. That looks pretty cool, but I don't want. Not really so much the Peter Pan. No.
Yeah. Anyway, we would love to hear what your favorite Disney hero or heroine or princess or we didn't even talk about their sidekicks because, you know, as Maui would say, you have you're the daughter of the chief, you wear a dress, and you have a animal sidekick, you're a princess. Mm-hmm. So what is your favorite princess or hero or even hero sidekick? We'd love to hear your reactions to this. We'd love to see if you go and take any of these quizzes, did you become, or did you get a different answer than Ursula or Jafar, which seems to be the most popular? Yeah. Or did you get a princess one? Who's your princess? Who's your inner princess? Which seems to be about 12 million surveys on that one here on Oh My Disney. But anyway, we should probably let you know how to get a hold of us. We'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make this possible to create The Secrets of Disney, and their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Disney and all the shows on StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting us at sqpn.com/give. And you can subscribe to this show on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or the SQPN YouTube channel. And you can also email us at disney@sqpn.com. You can also follow us on our social media, Facebook, StarQuest Media, or Twitter, SQPN is our handle. And next week, we really haven't talked about what we'll keep that a surprise for our topic for next week.
But when
we'll
they send their
talk about
emails or leave a comment, they should do it in the voice of their favorite hero or villain.
Oh, that'd be fun. Oh my gosh, that'd be so much fun.
Leave us a quote from your favorite hero or villain.
Right. Does that voice really me? Oh, well, there you go. Who's that villain?
If someone does Wall-E, I'll be totally impressed.
Oh, yeah. Until then, we have David Hanlos. We thank you for joining us on The Secrets of Disney. Thank you, David.
Love it.
And Lisa Hendy, we also thank you as well. And once again, I'm Deborah Shaban, and thank you for listening to The Secrets of Disney on StarQuest. Ta-ta for now.